So now I'm going to talk a little bit about how to use sources effectively. The first thing we need to think about is the difference between primary sources and secondary sources. Primary sources are the things we work on: literary texts, films, archival material. They are our raw material for analysis, interpretation, etc. Novels, poems, even newspaper articles from the time period would count as primary sources. Secondary sources are commentary and scholarship that people create about primary sources: journal articles, monographs, etc. A monograph is just a scholarly book that focuses on a highly specialized topic. So primary sources are the things themselves, the work, the raw material for the work that we do as literary scholars. Secondary sources are usually, in this context, peer-reviewed. And all that means is they go through a process during publication or leading up to publication where experts judge the research and determine its quality. And this is it's a complicated process, and it's also gotten a little bit controversial in the last couple of years, namely because a lot of people, scholars, literary scholars, think that perhaps peer review should happen by readers. And so people should be able to publish whatever they want, and then the peers doing the reviewing would be readers who ultimately decide whether or not the work is valuable. And so there's been a lot of discussion about whether or not we should remove this kind of gatekeeping process. It's an interesting topic just for anybody who's kind of interested in scholarly publishing or publishing in general. But what we're looking for usually are books and articles that have been peer-reviewed. And that's partly why I suggest using the MLA bibliography, because pretty much everything in there has been peer-reviewed. So sometimes you might want to use a scholarly article, and sometimes you might want to use a book review. Both are found in journals. A scholarly article is original research, and a book review tells you what another work of original research is about and whether it's worth reading. I would suggest using book reviews to help you find works of original research to use in your papers and your projects, rather than using book reviews as your actual sources. Where else can you find sources? The works cited page of any article or book that you find. These can be incredibly valuable because what you get from the works cited page is all of the material that people have already been using, and it helps you see the gaps, it helps you see what else to do, and it also helps you not have to do a lot of that work yourself because someone has already done it. So I'm just going to pause a moment and show you different kinds of sources. Here is Mrs. Dalloway. This is a novel. This would be a primary source. Here is one of my favorite books, Virginia Woolf, The Intellectual and the Public Sphere. This is a great book about different kinds of writing that Woolf did, especially her work as a publisher and a reviewer. And this would be a secondary source. This is a scholarly book that somebody published doing a lot of original research on Woolf's writing. And you can see that Cambridge University Press is the press that did this book. And that would be a reputable university press, a scholarly press with very rigorous standards for peer review. What else can we use? Archival material. Here, Woolf Online is a digital source. We've mentioned some of this so far. We'll be talking about it some more in class, especially looking at the Modernist Journals project. There's a ton of fantastic archival material online now, all digital, all open access. And this is a great resource for your work. So if you wanted to take a look at Virginia Woolf's diary, Woolf Online would be a great place to go. And you can see that there's actually a ton of stuff here: manuscripts, background about her life, background about her family, lots of really good stuff, including some material that's never been published. Sketch of the Past, for example, is a biographical piece that wasn't published until fairly recently, actually. And then lots of other sources you could look for. And then finally, blogs. Can you use blogs? Sure. It depends on what you're using them for. So this is a great blog, Blogging Woolf, and the woman who runs it, Paula Maggio, is a Woolf scholar. And there's lots of different kinds of things that she looks at. News about Woolf, conferences. Here's a Virginia Woolf conference that will be happening out in Bloomsburg, a little bit west of us. But she also posts book reviews, news about art exhibits, things like that. So blogs can be useful for your research. You You can see writers doing their work. You can see research and process. You can also see how people read. And if you're interested in studying things like audience and reader reception and how classic works of literature live on in the contemporary literary scene, this can be incredibly helpful. So when you're evaluating your sources, you want to ask, is it peer-reviewed? Generally, we're going to be looking for yes, but not necessarily always. Is it a book review? If so, you might want to think about checking out the actual book that the book review is talking about. Is it a blog? If it is, that you can certainly consider using it. If it's part of a larger conversation, you might want to find out about that. You might want to see if there's other things that the blogger has written about. And so there's lots of different kinds of material you can use, and it's especially good to think about some of these kinds of sources if you're looking for material to use in an extended project. And so if you're thinking about a long project for this class, if you're looking ahead to senior seminar and thinking about that very long piece of original scholarship you're going to have to be producing, these are all good things for you to think about using. You might not use all of them, you might use all of them. You might use some of them for different purposes. But one of the things to keep in mind is that this kind of research is multimodal. There's lots of different paths you can take, and there's lots of different ways to try to explore the questions you're interested in. And so this is just kind of in general an overview of using sources. And if you have any questions, you can let me know. And as we start thinking about your long project, and as you start forming your individual agenda, we might want to come back to some of this stuff and figure out what's most useful for you.